One of the things that I wanted to demonstrate on our workshop, but I ran out of time so I couldn't do it, is something called the Orton effect. Some of you may be familiar with the Orton effect, some may not. But the Orton effect can be quite a useful tool to help with images. So this is a photograph by Colin Sharp of a waterfall. And I thought, this will make a good example to use to demonstrate what the Orton effect is. What the Orton effect is, it was something that was created by Michael Orton, an American photographer back in the 1980s. And what he did is he took one photograph, such as this one, which is correctly exposed, and then he took another photograph that was roughly 2 stops overexposed, and it was also he also defocused it, so it was blurred as well. And then in the darkroom he combined those 2 images to provide a bit of a glow on a photograph. So I'm going to demonstrate how we create this. So the first thing we need to do is to duplicate this layer. So you can either drag it down onto the new button or press Ctrl J, or you can go up here with new layer from background. They'll all do the same thing. With this photo, now I'm going to show you how you do this in Photoshop, and then I'll show you how you do it in Photoshop Elements. I'll do that in a separate video. But in Photoshop, what you would do is you would go to right click on this image and choose Convert to Smart Object, and then you'd go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter, and I'm going to adjust the exposure on this by around 2 stops, so it's quite bright. We'll click on OK. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Blur Gallery and Iris Blur. Now this is going to imitate what Michael Orton did much more effectively, but you could use Gaussian blur in here as well. Let's just move that off center so this is blurred. Then we need to blur this by a suitable amount that we can still recognize what the photo is, but it's clearly not sharp. Now a good starting point for the blur on here, we can set the blur up here in the Blur Tools panel. A good starting point for this is to set the amount in pixels equal to half what your megapixel size is of your camera. Now I don't know what size camera was used for this photograph, so I've just chosen 15 pixels. We'll say OK to that, and that produces me a layer which is overexposed and it's blurred, which is exactly what Michael Orton would do. And then we just need to choose a suitable layer. Sorry, not layer, a suitable blend mode. And there are different ones that you could use here. So you might choose multiply, you might choose overlay, or you might choose soft light. I think soft light works quite well with this. Now that's overdone, but we can pull back on the opacity to give us something a little bit better. And then what I want to do is I'd just like to mask the effect out on the water. So I select this white mask tool here and we select a brush with black, reduce the size, down to something suitable. It might be a little bit on the small side. And then we're just going to paint in here just to get rid of that. Then the other thing that I want to do on this is I want to add a hue and saturation layer. We're not going to do anything with choosing saturated colours or anything like that, but what I am going to do is choose the water because there's a bit of cyan and blue in there. So we've selected the cyan, and then we're just going to desaturate that, and maybe we'll lighten it a bit as well to turn that a little bit whiter. And then on the mask, what we'll do is we'll invert the mask, obviously gone black, and this time we'll paint with a white brush in here, and we'll just make sure that the saturation layer is working on the water and not the whole image. Quick and easy, and that's what the Orton effect is. So it just adds a little bit of a glow to this. So if we disable those two layers, that's how the image started off, and this is how it ended up relatively quickly. So it'll no doubt not surprise you to know that I have created an action for the Orton effect. So here's the image. I'm just going to click on iris blur, and we just click on execute to first of all, we're being asked how much do we want to brighten this photo. I'll select the default. Then we're asked, about masking blurring the image. So I'm just going to accept 34. You might want to go with more or less. And then all you need to do is work out what the right opacity is for your photo. That's the Orton effect. The Orton effect can be used with any type of photography, or any type of photograph, but it doesn't mean that you can use it on every photo. It works well on this image because you've got some darker areas and some lighter areas and got some nice sunlight coming in. But it's not going to work on all waterfalls. So it's something that you would have to try it, see if it works. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, you can delete the layer. That's the Orton effect in Photoshop.